So in Wisconsin, there was a hearing on a newly proposed so-called right-to-work bill, and there was time that was allotted during the debate for public comment. So the good people of Wisconsin took their democratic duty very seriously, and they showed up in huge numbers to give their own opinion on the situation. And it was so busy and so many people wanted to comment on this that there were people outside of the building and inside the building. It was absolutely packed. It was elbow to elbow. And these people were all passionate and they were all waiting to be heard. They wanted to do their democratic duty in a society that's supposed to be democratic and a civilization that's supposed to be democratic. And to give you an idea of the breakdown in support versus opposition when it comes to this bill, 1,750 people were against the so-called right-to-work bill, and only 28 people were for it. Isn't it fascinating when you get a real look into democratically how people feel about a given proposal versus when you look at how the establishment acts on these issues? So if you look at the establishment and you take their opinions on so-called right to work, you have, if anything, it leans in favor of, yes, let's do this. Let's get this legislation through. And it's a minority of people who are against it. But when you actually look at the people, 1,750 are like, whoa, no, we're against this. And only 28 were for it. See, apparently the Koch brothers and all the other right-wing think tanks that try to influence the political discourse in America, they forgot to send their buses full of people pretending to be on the side of the right-to-work bill. That's what they usually do. It's called AstroTurf political organizations, where they pretend to be on certain sides because they're paid to be on that side by big corporations or rich people. But they forgot to bus in those people this time, and it showed up in the numbers. So the Republican lawmakers sat there and they were watching as one person after another person came up and tore the bill to shreds and said, we hate this. So what did they decide to do as they were watching their beliefs get torn apart and their bill get torn apart? They shut down the hearing. They said, we don't like the fact that everybody's disagreeing with us. So we're done here. And they left like 30 minutes early or something like that. Now, it's hilarious because they don't say that that's the reason they did it. They go, oh, no, see, the problem is that we felt threatened. So therefore, we needed to shut down the meeting early, not let people have their say. Then they voted to approve the so-called right-to-work bill amongst the tremendous opposition. And by the way, there was one Democratic lawmaker on the panel, and he was like, What are you talking about threatened? You're not. There's no evidence of a threat anywhere in any way. These are just people who are coming up, who are giving their opinions, and they don't agree with you. So you just want to shut down debate. So yet again, we have a situation where the rich, the corporations, the elite, they have gotten their way and they have jammed through a bill that only they support. When you go to the people, again, it's a microcosm of the larger situation. 1,750 people were against the bill and 28 were for it. So why were so many people opposed to this bill? Well, to answer that, we turn to the Economic Policy Institute and some of their research. They say the following, quote, right-to-work laws lower wages for union and non-union workers by an average of $1,500 a year and decrease the likelihood employees will get health insurance or pensions through their jobs. So that's why people are angry. This is just a union-busting measure. And don't fall for the stupid name. I mean, this is the same as calling the Patriot Act the Patriot Act. If you disagree with this, we guess you're not a patriot. We guess you hate America if you disagree with the Patriot Act. Meanwhile, what's in the Patriot Act? Legalizing all types of illegal wars and bringing in NSA spying and allotting funding for stuff like Guantanamo Bay and subverting the Constitution in 500 ways and all these problems with it. And that's why they call it the Patriot Act. It's Orwell 101. You cover up the true intention of the bill by naming it the opposite. So they call it a right-to-work law because who could say, at face value, I am against the right to work? You can't do that, right? So you call it right to work even though the intention is right to work for less. I mean, that's what this is really about. If you really had to name the bill based on the effects that it will have, you would call this right to work for less. Because I just told you, based on the research, $1,500 a year decrease in pay, and less people get health insurance, and your pension gets slashed. So this is why people are against it. So if you don't believe me, why don't we take a second here and listen to Scott Walker himself, the governor of Wisconsin, on what the real goal is of the so-called right-to-work law.
For you, yeah. Any chance we'll ever get to be a completely red state and work on these unions?
Oh, yeah.
And become a right to work?
Well, in fact, the big thing...
What can we do to help you?
Well, we're going to start in a couple of weeks with our budget adjustment bill. The first step is we're going to deal with collective bargaining for all public employee unions.
Right.
Because you divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. That's what right to work is. So-called right to work. I need to make sure not to buy into their propaganda framing. So-called right to work bills. Right to work for less bills. It's divide and conquer. You know who he was talking to there? That's a billionaire businesswoman who donated heavily to his campaign. That's how American politics really works, what you just saw right there.